Welcome back to Kuma English Listening Hub. Today we are exploring a surprising trend in the world of art and entertainment. Pop-up museums. You might have seen them on social media without even realizing it. They are those colorful, temporary spaces filled with giant balloons, mirror rooms, or rooms where it seems to be raining confetti. People line up to take photos, jump into ball pits, and walk through glowing tunnels. But what exactly are pop-up museums? Are they really museums? Are they just Instagram backdrops? Or are they something in between, blending art, entertainment, and digital culture? In this episode, we will look at how pop-up museums turn empty spaces into immersive art experiences, and what this tells us about how we enjoy culture today. First, let's define what a pop-up museum is. A pop-up museum is a temporary, usually short-term exhibition space that appears in a rented building, a shopping mall, a warehouse, or even inside an old factory. It opens for a few weeks or a few months and then disappears, often moving to another city. Unlike traditional museums, which usually have permanent collections and long-term exhibitions, pop-up museums are designed to be limited-time events. They are often highly visual, interactive, and very photo-friendly. You don't just walk around and look at paintings on walls. Instead, you step into rooms that feel like movie sets or dreamlike worlds. You might slide into a pool of colorful foam cubes, walk through a tunnel filled with LED lights, sit inside a huge teacup in a surreal, oversized kitchen, stand in front of a wall completely covered in donuts or flowers. Many pop-up museums also have a clear theme, such as ice cream, color, illusions, or digital light. Their main goal is to create immersive experiences, where visitors feel surrounded by art instead of simply observing it from a distance. Now, why have pop-up museums become so popular so quickly? One major reason is social media. In many cities, there is a new form of tourism, people visiting places that look good in photos. Pop-up museums take advantage of this trend. They are designed with cameras in mind, especially smartphone cameras. Almost every room contains something that looks dramatic when photographed. A wall with neon signs, a bathtub full of rubber ducks, or a floor covered in mirrors. Visitors are encouraged to take photos and share them online. Some pop-up museums even mark the best spots, with small signs that say things like, "Best photo angle here," or "Stand here for the perfect shot." Others offer ring lights or phone stands so you can take well-lit selfies. In this way, visitors become unpaid advertisers. Every time someone posts a photo and tags the location, they are promoting the museum to all their followers. This creates a cycle. People see their friends' photos, feel curious or slightly jealous, and then buy tickets themselves. From a business perspective, this is extremely effective. Instead of paying for huge advertising campaigns, pop-up museums rely on word of mouth and user-generated content. But pop-up museums are not only about photos. They are also a clever response to the problem of empty urban spaces. In many big cities, you can find abandoned department stores, half-empty shopping malls, or storage spaces that are waiting for new tenants. These spaces are often too large or too expensive for small businesses to rent long-term. However, for a short-term project like a pop-up museum, they are perfect. Organizers can rent them for a few months, transform them into a fantasy world, and then move on when the lease ends. This arrangement benefits everyone. The building owner earns some money from a space that would otherwise be empty. The neighborhood gets more visitors, which can help nearby cafes and shops. The organizers test their concept without committing to a permanent location. In some cases, city governments even support such projects because they bring life back to neglected areas. A silent street becomes busy again, at least for a while, as people line up to enter a temporary universe of light and color. Of course, there are critics who argue that many pop-up museums are not really museums at all. Traditional museums usually have three main goals: to collect, preserve, and educate. They conserve historical or artistic objects, study them, and share knowledge with the public. By contrast, many pop-up museums do not have collections in the traditional sense. They rarely preserve anything long-term. Most of their installations are made specifically for one show and are taken down when the event ends. And while they sometimes include short explanations or labels, education is not usually the main focus. Some critics call them selfie factories or photo studios with entry fees. They worry that culture is becoming too superficial, that people care more about taking the perfect picture than about understanding the meaning behind the art. They ask, if visitors spend most of their time posing, are they truly engaging with the art, or are they just using it as a background for their own image? This criticism raises an important question about how we define culture in the digital age. On the other hand, defenders of pop-up museums argue that these spaces make art more approachable. Traditional museums can feel intimidating, especially for people who did not grow up visiting them. The white walls, the quiet rooms, and the no-touching signs can make art feel distant. In contrast, pop-up museums invite people to play. You are encouraged to touch, sit, jump, and interact. You do not need to know anything about art history. You just need to be curious. For many visitors, this is their first time entering something called a museum. If they enjoy it, they may later feel more confident visiting other cultural spaces too. In addition, some pop-up museums do include strong artistic concepts. For example, there are immersive exhibitions that use projections and sound to transform classical paintings into moving experiences. Others explore themes like memory, time, or climate change using light installations, smells, and soundscapes. In these cases, the format is similar to that of an art installation, but the atmosphere is more relaxed and playful. Visitors are allowed to enjoy both the art and the experience of being inside it. So perhaps the question is not whether pop-up museums are real museums, but whether they can be a gateway to a broader interest in art and creativity. Pop-up museums also show how our relationship with art is changing. In the past, many people saw art as something to be respected from a distance. You looked at a painting, you listened to music, you read a poem. Today, there is a growing desire to participate. People want to step into the painting, walk through the music, and become part of the story. They want immersive experiences where all their senses are involved. Pop-up museums respond to this desire. They blur the line between audience and artwork. For example, in a room filled with thousands of hanging ribbons, the installation is not complete until someone moves through it, pushing the ribbons aside and changing their shape. In a space covered in interactive projections, the patterns change when visitors walk over them. The visitor becomes a co-creator. This idea is not completely new. Artists have been making interactive installations for decades. But what is new is the scale. Pop-up museums bring this kind of art to mainstream audiences and connect it directly to digital sharing. When visitors capture themselves inside these installations and share the images, the artwork continues to live online in constantly changing forms. Another interesting aspect is how pop-up museums change the business model of art exhibitions. Traditional museums often rely on government funding, donations, and ticket sales. They usually have permanent staff, long-term research projects, and strict conservation requirements. Pop-up museums are more like startups. They appear quickly and move fast, test different cities and see where the demand is highest, adjust their content based on feedback and social media reaction. Some pop-up concepts tour internationally, visiting several countries in a few years. They constantly update their installations to keep them fresh and shareable. Tickets are often more expensive than standard museum entry, and many shows also sell branded merchandise, such as t-shirts, phone cases, or sweets related to the theme. For artists, this can mean new opportunities. Instead of waiting years for a traditional museum exhibition, they can collaborate with a pop-up project and see their work reach a wider and more diverse audience. Of course, this commercial side also has risks. If the focus becomes only about profit and social media visibility, the artistic quality may be neglected. The challenge is to find a balance between entertainment, business, and genuine creativity. So, how might pop-up museums develop in the future? We can already see some possible directions. One direction is greater depth. Some organizers are starting to include more storytelling and context in their installations. Instead of just offering beautiful rooms, they create a narrative that connects each space. For example, a pop-up exhibition about the ocean might guide visitors through rooms representing different depths of the sea, from the bright surface to the mysterious deep, while also explaining the impact of pollution and climate change. Another direction is technology. As virtual reality and augmented reality become more affordable, we may see pop-up experiences where visitors wear lightweight headsets or use their phones to see digital layers on top of physical rooms. Imagine standing in a quiet, empty warehouse, but through your glasses, you see it filled with floating planets, moving creatures, or historical scenes. There is also potential for more collaboration with local communities. Instead of importing the same show into every city, future pop-up museums might invite local artists to contribute, making each version slightly different and more connected to its surroundings. And finally, we may see more hybrid spaces that combine elements of a pop-up museum, a cafe, a performance venue, and a workshop area. In these places, you could not only take photos, but also attend talks, create your own art, or join small group activities. Before we finish, let's reflect on what pop-up museums can teach us about contemporary culture. They reveal that we increasingly enjoy experiences, not just objects. We like to participate, not only to observe. We use digital sharing as part of how we consume culture. They also show a tension between depth and speed. On one hand, we want meaningful encounters with art. On the other hand, we are attracted to quick, visually striking experiences that fit into our busy, screen-filled lives. Pop-up museums sit right at the center of this tension. They can be superficial if we only rush through them, taking photos without thinking. But they can also be powerful if they encourage us to notice color, light, space, and our own reactions in a more conscious way. As language learners, you can use places like these not only for entertainment, but also for practice. If you ever visit a pop-up museum, try to describe each room in English to your friend. Explain how the space makes you feel. Compare it to other cultural experiences you have had. This will help you build vocabulary related to art, space, and emotion, while also making your visit more meaningful. Let's finish with a short reflection task in English. Imagine a pop-up museum in your city, based on something that represents your culture. What would its theme be? What kinds of rooms would visitors walk through? What sounds, colors, or smells would they experience? Try to describe it in 3 or 4 sentences, out loud or in writing. Focus on using adjectives and verbs that create a vivid picture. Thank you for listening to Kuma English Listening Hub. If you found this episode useful, remember you can listen again to catch new details, pause to take notes, or shadow the audio by repeating sentences after the speaker. See you next time for another deep dive into the stories behind the things we enjoy in our everyday lives.